You would think time heals everything, but what if it doesn't? What if the pain that keeps returning isn't asking to disappear, but to be seen? Some wounds don't fade with time, they wait. They wait for the moment you're finally strong enough to stop running and look them in the eye. This is the wound that Carl Jung spoke of. The invisible one that shapes our choices, our love, our destiny. It's the wound every woman carries, the ache of being unseen, unheard, misunderstood. But within that ache lies your awakening. Because the wound that demands to be seen is the one that will set you free. The wound that demands to be seen, Carl Jung. You would think that time heals all wounds, but what if it doesn't? What if some wounds don't want to be healed, they want to be seen? There is a wound that exists not on the skin, but in the soul, a silent ache that pulses beneath a woman's calm voice and graceful smile. It hides behind her achievements, behind the way she says, "I'm fine," when she is anything but. It's the wound that Jung once described, the kind that shapes who we become if we dare to face it. But most do not. Because to see the wound is to confront the self, and that is the most terrifying act of all. In every woman, there lies a split between who she thinks she should be and who she truly is. One side shines with perfection, approval, and worthiness. The other trembles in the dark, whispering all the things she's been told to hide, her anger, her longing, her hunger to be chosen. Society has taught her to silence this voice. But what is silenced does not die, it festers. And one day, it begins to demand attention. This is the shadow, the repressed part of the psyche that Jung believed holds the key to our wholeness. It carries every part of ourselves we've denied, our jealousy, our rage, our shame, and turns them into teachers. But only if we stop running. Most women, however, run their entire lives. They chase relationships that mirror their unhealed pain, attracting those who wound them in the exact way they've been wounded before. It's not bad luck, it's the unconscious trying to make itself known. The wound creates a pattern, and that pattern keeps repeating until it is recognized. So she meets the man who doesn't see her. She pours her heart out to him, only to find herself empty. She gives, and gives, and gives, as if love were proof of her worth. But he becomes distant, cold, unreachable. And deep down, something inside her whispers, "This feeling is familiar." Because it is. It is the echo of her earliest rejection, the feeling of being unseen by the one she loved first. And once again, she tries to earn what should have been freely given. This is not weakness. It is psychology. It is the invisible dance between the conscious and the unconscious. Jung called it projection, when we cast the unhealed parts of ourselves onto others, mistaking them for the source of our pain. But the truth is, they are merely the mirror, the reflection of what we have not yet faced within. Every woman who has ever felt invisible carries this archetypal story within her, the Persephone who was taken into the underworld, the wounded feminine who must descend to her own darkness before she can rise again. The underworld is not a place outside of her, it's the depth of her own psyche. It's the place she fears most, the confrontation with her unmet needs, her suppressed anger, her unspoken truths. And yet, this descent is sacred. For in Jungian thought, every descent contains the seed of transformation. But transformation requires honesty, brutal, radical honesty. The kind that makes you tremble when you admit how much you've betrayed yourself just to be loved. The kind that makes you realize how you've been begging for crumbs when you were meant to feast. The kind that makes you see that the man who doesn't choose you is not the enemy, he's the messenger. He reveals the depth of your wound. He shows you the mirror and whispers, "This is what you must heal." And so she stands at the edge of her own awakening, torn between the comfort of her illusions and the pain of truth. Because to heal the wound that demands to be seen, she must first stop hiding it. She must bring it to the light, not to be pitied, but to be understood. The wound is not her weakness. It is her initiation. In that moment of reckoning, something profound begins to shift. The pain no longer feels like punishment, it feels like guidance. The emptiness becomes a doorway. The longing becomes a teacher. She realizes that every time she sought to be seen, what she truly desired was to see herself. The man fades. The rejection dissolves. What remains is the lesson that the feminine power does not come from being adored, but from being aware. The woman who meets her shadow becomes whole. She stops seeking to be chosen because she recognizes that she already is, by life itself. And that realization, quiet as it may be, is the beginning of everything. When the wound begins to speak, it does not whisper, it roars. It tears through the illusion she built around herself, demanding to be felt, not fixed. For so long, she's been told that healing means forgetting, that strength means silence. But the deeper truth, the Jungian truth, is that healing begins when the wound is given voice. Every woman who feels unseen has carried a silent rebellion within her. She's been the caretaker, the peacemaker, the lover who understands everyone but herself. And behind her smile lies exhaustion, an ache that has no language. Yet in that exhaustion lives something ancient, the call of the self, the deeper, truer identity beyond the persona she wears for the world. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. But wholeness is not perfection, it's the union of all that's been rejected. To individuate, she must return to the places she has avoided. The abandoned parts of her psyche wait like forgotten children, longing to be held. The woman who suppresses her anger becomes disconnected from her power. The woman who hides her sadness loses touch with her tenderness. The woman who denies her longing loses her direction. Each emotion she's been taught to hide is a compass pointing toward her truth. And yet, the world has taught her otherwise. The world tells her to be strong, but what it really means is to be numb. It tells her to move on, to forget, to replace her pain with distraction. But there's a cost to that kind of survival. The cost is authenticity. Because every time she buries her emotion, she buries herself. There is a moment in every woman's life when the mask begins to crack. It often comes after a heartbreak so deep it shatters her sense of control. The illusion of being fine collapses. She can no longer maintain the facade. This collapse is not failure, it is initiation. It is the descent into her inner world, the journey Jung described as the night sea voyage of the soul. Here, in the darkness, she meets her shadow face to face. It takes many forms, the jealous friend, the desperate lover, the angry child. She wants to turn away, but she cannot. Because to turn away is to remain fragmented. The only way out is through. The shadow speaks in symbols, in dreams, in repeated patterns that defy logic but carry meaning. The man who ignores her, the friend who betrays her, the silence she receives after giving her all, each is a mirror. And if she dares to look deeply enough, she will see herself reflected there, not her weakness, but her unmet need for self-recognition. Jung once wrote that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. For many women, this wound begins before they can name it. A mother who never felt seen passes down the same invisible inheritance. A father who withheld affection teaches her that love must be earned. She grows up seeking what she was denied, mistaking recognition for love and attention for safety. The cycle continues until she becomes conscious of it. To become conscious is to awaken. It's to see the invisible patterns that have shaped her choices. It's to stop blaming fate and start understanding the psyche's language. In the alchemy of the soul, awareness is the first fire. It burns away illusion. And though it hurts, it purifies. This is why the wound demands to be seen. Not to cause pain, but to awaken it. Because pain is not the enemy, unconsciousness is. Pain, when faced with courage, becomes a doorway to consciousness. It is the soul's way of saying, there is more of you to discover. So she begins to listen, to her body, to her intuition, to the quiet ache beneath her ribs that says, I'm still here. She learns that the feminine is not fragile, it is fierce in its sensitivity. It feels deeply not because it is weak, but because it is alive. Her tears are sacred. Her boundaries are holy. Her longing is not a flaw, it's evidence of her depth. The feminine wound, once seen, becomes wisdom. She no longer hides her pain behind perfection. She wears it like an emblem, not of defeat, but of resurrection. She understands that every heartbreak was not a loss, it was a mirror that guided her back to herself. And in that recognition, something luminous begins to stir within her, the quiet power of a woman who no longer needs to be seen to know she exists. In the stillness that follows her awakening, she begins to see with new eyes. The people she once blamed now appear differently, not as villains, but as mirrors. The man who withheld affection was not a punishment, but a reflection of her own inner withholding. The friend who dismissed her feelings was not cruel, but unconscious, echoing the same dismissiveness she had shown herself. This revelation doesn't come easily, it tears through her illusions like lightning through a storm. But with every illusion that burns away, she steps closer to truth. Jung said that what we deny in ourselves will surface in our fate. And fate, for her, has been relentless, presenting her again and again with the same kind of love that leaves her unseen. She once thought the universe was cruel, playing tricks on her heart. But now, she begins to understand, the universe is exact. It will repeat the same lesson until the soul integrates what it has resisted. The faces may change, but the pattern remains, until she decides to break it. Breaking it does not mean walking away from others, it means walking back to herself. It means reclaiming the projections she scattered into the world, the idealized love, the unmet expectations, the desperate longing for validation. One by one, she calls them home. She begins to see that no one can ever give her the love she has denied herself. No one can fill a void that she protects through self-abandonment. This is the painful beauty of consciousness. It asks for responsibility. It asks her to stop saying he hurt me and start asking, what part of me kept choosing the hurt? It asks her to stop running from her shadow and instead, to sit beside it, listening. The moment she does, the energy shifts. The victim dissolves, and in her place emerges the witness, calm, aware, untouchable. The feminine journey has always been misunderstood because it is inward, invisible, silent. While the masculine strives to conquer the outer world, the feminine descends into the inner. Her power does not roar, it radiates. It doesn't control, it transforms. Her healing does not come from logic, but from surrender. And in surrender, she finds what the Stoics and Jung both knew, that peace comes not from mastering the world, but from mastering one's response to it. She begins to notice how her energy shifts when she is rooted in self-worth. The same situations that once broke her now reveal their emptiness. The man who withholds affection no longer feels like a threat. He feels small, lost, still hiding from his own wounds. The world that once demanded her performance now feels irrelevant. She no longer dances for approval, she moves from alignment. This is individuation, not becoming someone new, but remembering who she's always been beneath conditioning. The woman who learns to hold her pain without collapsing becomes magnetic, serene, self-contained. Her love no longer leaks through desperation, it flows through presence. And in that presence, others feel something rare, authenticity. But individuation comes at a cost. The more conscious she becomes, the fewer illusions she can keep. The friendships built on gossip fade. The lovers who feed on her insecurity disappear. The dreams that once defined her feel too small. At first, this loneliness feels unbearable, like being exiled from her old life. Yet beneath the loneliness lies liberation. Because what is leaving her is not love, it's dependency. What is dying is not her joy, it's her attachment to being chosen. She learns that peace does not come from control. It comes from trust, trust in timing, trust in the psyche, trust in the intelligence of the wound itself. The wound is not her enemy, it is her guide, carving her open so the light can enter. What once felt like punishment now feels like initiation. And perhaps the most sacred moment of all arrives quietly. She no longer seeks closure from others. She no longer needs them to understand, apologize, or return. The story completes itself when she accepts that it was never about them, it was about her becoming. The wound has done its work. It has made her conscious. It has brought her home. She looks back at the version of herself who begged to be seen and realizes she was never invisible. She was only hiding behind who she thought she had to be. And now, standing in her truth, she no longer waits to be chosen. She chooses. There comes a moment, quiet, sacred, and devastatingly clear when she realizes that nothing outside of her was ever meant to complete her. The love she longed for, the validation she chased, the approval she worshipped, all were mirrors reflecting the places she had not yet returned to within herself. What she sought in others was never love, it was permission. Permission to exist. Permission to feel. Permission to be. And when she finally sees this truth, something ancient within her exhales. The war is over. The ache remains, but it has changed shape, from a wound into wisdom, from longing into awareness. She no longer flinches from her reflection, she studies it. There, in the quiet space between what she was and what she is becoming, she meets her own eyes and sees not a victim, not a survivor, but an alchemist. Because that is what the feminine becomes when she heals, a transmuter of pain into power, of loss into depth, of endings into rebirth. She learns what the Stoics whispered and Jung understood, that suffering becomes sacred when it births consciousness. It is not meant to destroy her, but to reveal the invincible essence that can never be taken from her. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every silence she endured was not a punishment but a purification. It stripped her of illusions. It humbled her ego. It brought her to her knees, and in doing so, it opened the only doorway that ever mattered, the one leading inward. Because until a woman meets herself in the ruins, she does not know her strength. Now, when she loves, it is no longer a plea. It is an offering. When she speaks, it is not to be heard but to express truth. When she walks into a room, her energy does not ask, "Am I enough?" It declares, "I am whole." This is not arrogance, it is remembrance. The remembrance that she was never broken, only divided from herself. The feminine energy, when healed, is magnetic in its stillness. She no longer performs softness to be lovable or hides her power to be accepted. She embodies both. She can weep and roar, nurture and destroy, yield and command, for she is no longer bound by the false dichotomy that told her she must be either or. Jung would call this integration, the sacred marriage between her inner masculine and feminine. Her masculine no longer dominates, it protects. It provides structure for her intuition to flow freely. Her feminine no longer manipulates, it radiates. It trusts that what belongs will come and what leaves was never meant to stay. Together, they move as one psyche, balanced and sovereign. The world may not understand this version of her. Some will call her distant because she no longer chases. Others will call her intimidating because she no longer apologizes for existing. But the truth is simpler, she is free. She has stepped out of the old paradigm where love was a transaction and into the new one where love is a state of being. She now recognizes that connection without consciousness is addiction, that attention without authenticity is emptiness. She no longer feeds the wound by seeking temporary comfort, she nourishes the soul by choosing what aligns. And in that choosing, she becomes untouchable, not because she is closed, but because she is whole. She has learned what the philosophers meant when they spoke of tranquility, ataraxia, the calm of one who is unmoved by external storms. Her peace no longer depends on being loved, understood, or chosen. It lives in her bones, in her breath, in the unshakable knowing that her worth is intrinsic. Now, when the world tries to provoke her, when someone withdraws, when silence returns, when rejection whispers, she smiles. Because she sees the pattern, but she no longer steps into it. The wound still exists, but it no longer controls her. It has become part of her mythology, not her prison. And perhaps this is the final revelation, that true healing is not about erasing pain but about integrating it so deeply that it no longer defines you. The woman who has faced her wound no longer fears darkness, she carries light into it. She knows that love is not something to be earned, it is something to be embodied. She understands now, with the quiet strength of one who has walked through her own fire, that the woman who understands her worth does not chase, she chooses.